What is going on, guys? Y'all must have forgot Jon Jones is the man, the greatest fighter of all time. Maybe GSP can, have a say in that conversation, but it's very hard to argue. Record is 27-1-1, one no contest, one disqualification loss, and the guy's undefeated in the eyes of everyone, including the president of the UFC, Dana White. Jon Jones is undefeated. Now, he should technically fight Tom Aspinall. Tom Aspinall is the interim champ. Jones is the heavyweight champ, and they should fight for that undisputed title. But the guy deserves a legacy fight. And Tom Aspinall, with all due respect, even though he's the baddest heavyweight on the planet, and that includes Jon Jones, in my opinion, he's the most dangerous guy for Jon Jones. He doesn't really have a legacy. He's not a legend. He's not a guy that carries a big name. And even though it would be very, very impressive for Jon Jones to come in and fight him and possibly win, I don't think the risk to reward is really worth it for Jon at this point. Jon Jones fighting Stipe Miocic, it's a little bit lackluster at this point just due to the fact that Stipe is pretty washed up, I would say. He's not the same guy, because Stipe back in his prime would be a legitimate matchup both for Jones and Tom Aspinall, but at his current state, I think it will be an easy one for Jones. But I think he deserves it, and I think Stipe deserves it too. A lot of people are forgetting this. If Stipe actually wins this fight, which, the chances are fairly slim, he's beat the greatest fighter of all time. He's beat Daniel Cormier twice. He's the greatest heavyweight of all time. And now he has, some say in that greatest fighter of all time conversation. So this is a legacy fight for both of these guys. And either of these guys fighting Tom Aspinall, who's a dangerous young lion at this point, doesn't really make any sense. Risk to reward is just insane. It's just not worth it. Let's just go over through Jon Jones's career highlights. Now, I'm going to pick 3 fights that really stand out to me. He has had so many amazing fights, and he's been in the UFC for God knows how long, and his resume is impressive. But let's go over 3 fights. His first one being against Shogun Rua. This was his, chance at the title, which he just blasted through Shogun, started the fight with a flying knee, mauled Shogun to the body, took Shogun down, beat him against the cage, threw spinning elbows on him, and then finished him with a body shot as Shogun tapped 2 strikes on the floor. It was ruled a TKO, and this was Shogun Rua, who was Pride Grand Prix champion, a legitimate top-level fighter, and a guy who was a Muay Thai specialist, and Jon Jones really, really outstruck him in that fight. This was one of the fights that really put Jon on the map as far as not only a talent, but, a future legend possibly. The next fight that stands out for me is against Lyoto Machida. Now, Lyoto Machida, just like Shogun, could have fought at 185, and Lyoto did fight at 185 at some point. But Lyoto was an unsolvable puzzle, and Jon Jones was able to solve him fairly easily. He had a little bit of trouble at the beginning of the fight, but he was able to outstrike Lyoto, hit him again to the body, hit him with elbows in the clinch, and then finish him with a guillotine choke. I believe it was a high elbow guillotine, if I'm not mistaken, and it just dropped Lyoto on the floor like a sack of potatoes, just dead. And you could see the look on Lyoto's face. He's absolutely unconscious there. An impressive performance, to say the least. The last fight that I'm gonna, detail here for you guys is the second fight against Daniel Cormier. The first fight was competitive, although Jon Jones definitely won that fight. The second fight, Jon Jones had a chip on his shoulder, and it showed in the fight. He came in there to finish Daniel Cormier. Daniel Cormier is an MMA legend, a 2-division champion. You can argue that he's a top 10 greatest fighters of all time. And Jon Jones made easy work of him. Hit him with that head kick that Cormier had, prior to the fight said he wasn't going to get caught with, and then finished him with ground and pound and just mauled him. A truly impressive fight. Unfortunately for Jon Jones, he did test positive, and it was turned into a no contest. So these 3 fights really stand out to me in the career of Jon Jones at 185. Obviously, he had the fight against Cyril Gane, where he came to heavyweight, and he just mauled Gane as well. Jon Jones is the UFC. Jon Jones is MMA. Jon Jones is the greatest fighter of all time. It's very difficult to argue that unless you bring up George St. Pierre and Jon Jones's PED issues. But let's look at one other thing here, guys. Jon Jones's record, as I stated before, is 27-1-1. The no contest being against Cormier, and the one loss against Matt Hamill, which was a disqualification in which John Jones was absolutely mauling poor Matt. His first fight in the UFC at 7-0 was UFC 87, August 9th, 2008. Now keep this date in mind. John Jones comes into the UFC at 2008. Tom Aspinall, on the other hand, has his first professional MMA fight December 13th, 2014. So there's a 6-year difference between John Jones making his UFC debut to Tom Aspinall making his MMA debut. The longevity of John Jones is just ridiculous. It doesn't make any sense. Like, there's guys that have fought, Joe Lozon. There's other guys, Donald Cerrone, bunch of guys that have fought for a very long time in the UFC, but their record's spotty. John Jones is undefeated. And I know people are going to bring up the Khabib thing, oh, he's undefeated too, but Khabib fought way less than John Jones. Khabib had way less title defenses than John Jones. John Jones is just crazy good. And I know I sound like an absolute nut hugger here, but I'm just stating facts. I think the Tom Aspinall fight should happen, but I know why it won't happen. It makes sense why it doesn't want to happen. Tom Aspinall's record, 15-3, 12 wins, 15-3, 12 knockouts, and 3 submissions. The guy is legitimate, and I said he's the most dangerous heavyweight on the planet right now. He makes short work of some of the best fighters on the planet. But let's be honest, the fight that's going to happen and the fight that needs to happen at this point in the career trajectory of both these guys is Stipe Miocic versus John Jones for the heavyweight title. If Stipe wins, I mean, I don't. The internet might explode because I don't know what the odds are, but I don't think they're in favor of Stipe, and I think they're gonna be like really, really favored towards John Jones. I imagine Stipe is going to be like a plus 300, 400. I imagine that. And if John Jones wins, well, he just beat the shell of the greatest heavyweight fighter in UFC history. He's the greatest light heavyweight of all time, and he's undoubtedly the greatest fighter in UFC history. Guys, let me know what you think in the comments below. Stipe Miocic, does he even have a slight chance to win this fight?